Welcome to the Gab Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. To participate in the 2026 Book Award competitions, please visit independentpressaward.com and nycbigbookaward.com. On this episode of the Gab Talks, we're so excited to welcome author and journalist Jeremy Clift. Jeremy's debut sci-fi novel, Born in Space, Unlocking Destiny, is a distinguished favorite in the 2025 Independent Press Award in the audiobooks category. It was narrated by Gabrielle Gums-Gordon. His second book in the Galaxy series, Space Vault, The Seed Eclipse, is also a distinguished favorite in the 2025 Independent Press Award. Jeremy Clift is a science fiction author and former journalist. His first work of fiction, Born in Space, is part of his Sci-Fi Galaxy series of novels built around the growth of orbiting space habitats and the exploitation of asteroids. He examines what life might be like for the first children born off Earth. A former nonfiction publisher with the International Monetary Fund in Washington, D.C. He is a communications consultant who has also worked in magazines and was an international news and war correspondent for Reuters for 2 decades. A graduate of the London School of Economics and George Washington University, Jeremy has lived in a variety of capitals and cities around the world, including Beijing, Mumbai, Cairo, New Delhi, Jakarta, London, Manila, and Paris. Jeremy's daughter was born in Indonesia and his son was born in India. He's lived in the U.S. for the past 25 years and joins us today from Charlottesville, Virginia. Congratulations, Jeremy. Great to see you and welcome to the Gab Talks.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, before we get started, Jeremy, I'd love our listeners to get to know you, and then we'll delve into the books. You've had a fascinating global career as a journalist. What did you experience that led you to sci-fi and your interest in space exploration? Is this something that you had a fascination with as a kid?
No, not really. I started writing sci-fi after I was at the International Monetary Fund, and when I retired, I thought, okay, what's my next avenue? And at that time, there was a lot of chatter about exploiting asteroids. And I was thinking, what happens if man captures an asteroid and we start to mine it? It's going to alter the global economy in amazing ways, a bit like when the Spanish invaded Latin America in the 1600s and sent back gold ships to Europe, and it caused this enormous inflation in Europe. One asteroid is worth trillions of dollars, apparently, and it will completely upend the global economy. So I thought, well, that's an interesting starting point. And then I was thinking, well, what would it be like to live up there? And when I was in India, there's a community called Anglo-Indians who were born in India. They referred to Britain as home, but they'd never been there. And so this idea is that you have some children living on a space habitat, looking down at Earth all the time, like from the International Space Station. You can see Earth constantly, but you're brought up on a space station without any of the input of a normal childhood. So putting these things together with mining the moon, living in space, motherhood in space, and what would it be like for children who are brought up in these conditions, which I don't think is very far away. I think space habitats will exist quite quickly because it's not that difficult to create one. So you'll have the possibility of people looking down on Earth who have never lived on it.
You describe it as corporate greed collides with feisty motherhood, which
Yeah.
is exactly what you're describing. The books are remarkable, and they're not that far from the realm of possibility, as you just mentioned. Both books in the Galaxy series take place in the not too far off future, which is a little disconcerting, 2056 and
Yeah.
2063. So, without spoiler alerts, tell us a little bit about each novel. You described your inspiration for creating them, but just give us the brief plot behind each one.
Well, Born in Space is about a young woman who grows up in the United States, and her father is an astronomer, and her mother is a biologist, and they're involved in space activities, space exploration. By then, there's already colonization of the moon, and the family is recruited by a doctor who wants to experiment with having children born in space, incubated in space. So it's actually quite difficult to bear children in space because of low gravity. Obviously, you can conceive probably in space, but actually carrying to term is much more complex. So
The
the
challenge.
doctor experiments with this so that you could imagine a future where you start to colonize space without sending people from Earth. And the mother donates some eggs to the doctor, but then she gets maternal instincts and wants to stay in touch with these children. And the doctor doesn't want her to be involved at all. He blocks her access. And it's about the tussle between her desire to see her children and the doctor who wants to keep her away. And
And book two is Space Vault. So what is the brief plot of book two?
Space Vault is about a vault on the moon, created by the mother, and she is a biologist who collects seeds from all over the world and keeps them in safety in this moon vault for it's like the blueprints of life. And if anything happens on Earth, they're safely locked away on this moon vault. But the vault becomes a sort of issue of contention for both mankind and some alien species who want to use some of the seeds for their own use on planets that have disintegrated or deteriorated. So it's a tussle between civilizations and about human identity, who we are, where we are headed. It's the fusion of genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, moon colonization or colonization of space. Put all these things together, and it's about where are we headed, what are we doing?
Yeah, a lot of headline grabbers: AI, genetic engineering,
Yeah.
ecological instability. But the themes of both books, Jeremy, are actually more intimate and personal. Family bonds, maternal love. As you mentioned, you examine what life would be like for the first children born on Earth. Um, how did you get so interested in that central idea of humans being born in space rather than Earth?
Well, everybody talks about colonization of space and how you're going to do it. Are you going to send people all the time from Earth? I don't think so. The journeys are going to be too long.
Yeah.
So you have to solve the issue of how can you populate remote colonies if you wanted to.
What are some ethical issues because of this that your characters are faced with?
Well, one is just reproduction from human eggs and things like that, and what it means, the issues of consent, the issues of motherhood, and staying in touch with children who they are responsible for in a way. So many issues of where is humanity going and what will they face in terms of ethics and human issues.
Did you find that the moral and ethical questions were more complex in Born in Space or in Space Vault?
I think they're a continuation. The whole idea is to explore these issues where we're headed. And so you have the combination of artificial intelligence. Maybe you already have neuro links into the brain, so you start to get the issue of brains being hooked up to computers, which has already happened. And so, could you download your brain into a computer? Um, are are there artificial humans? Um, Already, we have things implanted in our bodies like pacemakers, things like that. A
You know,
friend of mine had an accident in Switzerland where they implanted something just to monitor his heart, but the monitor was monitored in Washington, D.C. So wherever he traveled in the world, they could see what his heart was doing. So, this is already happening. It's not
sure.
actually science fiction. It's already people have bionic legs, arms that can be worked through brain signals. And you already see how amazing robots are getting. So you could imagine that something is implanted into a robot and it becomes semi-human. So
Absolutely.
I don't think these things are actually science fiction any longer.
I would agree with that, especially in your book. Both books are really truly the antithesis rather of how protagonists are typically and historically portrayed in science fiction books, which are powerful male protagonists. So your main protagonists are powerful, strong females. So Jeremy, how did you come to this decision to make this your focus? And were you trying to convey something really special and interesting with that?
I didn't want to follow the same formula for science fiction that often people had in the past. I didn't want it to be male dominated. I wanted women to be interested in science fiction as much as men. And I think actually more women readers read science fiction than men do actually now.
Really?
So it's a big expanding area of writing. Uh, the Artemis program is about to launch in February to take man back to the moon, and I think there'll be a moon landing in the next year if everything goes according to plan, which it hasn't actually in the past. But we're going to go back to the moon, and that is going to create this amazing buzz around science fiction and everything lunar and space oriented. So, in a way, it's a slightly cynical approach that, okay, you want to ride this wave of publicity. When I was a child or young man, I watched the first moon landings from a remote army camp in Devon in England. And it was amazing to me
Yeah, of course.
watching this event. And I think people in the age of social media, people are going to be much more fascinated and amazed. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of doubt about, oh, does this happen? Does that happen? But, this time everybody will know, yes, we're really there. So I
Well, it's
think
so
it's going
much
to,
more accessible for everyone.
yep,
Not the moon. I just actually watching and experiencing this actually happen.
yeah, it will be mind-boggling, I think.
Both books in the Galaxy series have been described as emotionally charged, complex, thought-provoking, cutting edge, which that's wonderful. Congratulations. As the author, what is the underlying philosophical question that you almost demands that we as the readers ponder?
I think it's a combination of issues. Number one is trying to convey how wonderful Earth is.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of love story about Earth in a way, because Earth is our planet and we want to keep it special, even though we go elsewhere, even though we populate other places and maybe it'll be successful. Certainly, I think we can have habitats in space quite easily. And you can imagine people living in space for quite extended periods of time. But all of these things together are going to challenge us a lot, and we'll have to change the way we approach things.
What about the question, who owns life?
Yes, this is one of the central questions. The corporations now like to patent things, and the book sort of implies, oh, you could patent life itself, and there's obviously resistance around that. But as you if you have a bionic arm, is that arm owned by the company, or who owns it? If you had a brain implant, who owns your brain? So it's starting to get really ethically challenging for us all.
Did you discover anything positive or negative about our universe from writing the Galaxy series?
I I I realized how difficult all this is going to be, and how enormous it is, how many billions of stars there are, and um, it's just extraordinary that we're just on the edge of everything. This is just the start of some amazing journey for humankind, I think, but it's going to be transformational for everybody.
And not too far into the future, too.
I think so. I think it's all starting. There's so many inventions and a lot of progress being made and coming together. So you put all these things together, it will jumpstart our journey.
So, Jeremy, what tools did you utilize to kind of manage the narrative and keep it exciting, but also believable and compelling? Like you said, it really almost isn't science fiction.
I tried to make it as readable as possible for people who may not be completely into sci-fi,
Yeah.
so that's why it's meant to it has a lot of human emotion, a lot of human elements, um, stuff about family, motherhood, interrelationships between father and son, um, fathers and daughters, all of this together, because I don't think you want to write about just rockets or abstract stuff. And in the books, I find I do try to put in quite a lot of real scientific material just to make it believable for people to say, okay, this probably could happen.
Right.
Because as I was mentioning earlier, people like to label things as science fiction, therefore probably it doesn't affect them because it's in the future. But as I'm trying to say, actually, I think this is happening now.
Exactly. And it makes it so much more interesting for readers. And I'm sure it made it a much more interesting write for you as an author.
Yeah, I had a difficult time writing the first book because I've been a journalist for a long time, and then I was an editor at an international institution doing nonfiction, and the journey to transform into a fiction writer is much more difficult than I realized. You have to completely change the way you think, the way you write. Um, the detail that you absorb. So I found it. The first book took me at least 5 years to write,
Wow.
and the second book took me a year because I had all the characters set up already. But the first book was quite a difficult thing for me to do, just because you need to change your brain.
Yeah, it's a brain flex for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a completely different way of writing when you're writing
yeah,
fiction books than it is when you're writing journalism. It's completely
yeah.
different.
It is, yes,
Yeah.
and you don't want to be too dry or put in too much background at once because people get bored with that. So your instincts are wrong, uh,
Yeah,
in
you
a
have
way.
to switch everything because as a journalist, we're relying on facts and you're following that triangle. But
And
as a writer of fiction books, it's the complete opposite.
I think so, yes. So
Yeah.
that I had to learn that myself. And my first book I sent to lots of different readers to try to get their feedback. Some were very helpful. Some just said, "Oh, it's a very good," which I knew it wasn't. And
Well, it was
so
very generous and brave of you to send that out because I know some authors would not do that.
no, I had to send it out because I needed help with getting feedback about what works, because I didn't instinctively know what works in writing, and I'm sure that people can see that, oh, this guy is struggling in the first book because he's not quite sure how to handle this. But um, I'm learning as I go along. I think I've got a third book in the works, and I think that it's tighter. The plot is stronger. So everything gets stronger as you go along and you learn more.
Well, now you're an award-winning author. So that's pretty incredible. And so
Yeah,
you've made it. So, I read that you're a fan of Andy Weir's The Martian. Um,
yes,
I love that too, which coincidentally was also initially self-published. So how
exactly.
did that book influence you?
That gave me the hope that okay, I could go down this route because obviously when you start to be an author, you are faced with the choice: are you traditionally published or independently
Right,
published?
right.
And so I did a lot of research. I went to quite a lot of conferences. I knew how ignorant I was, and I was starting out. I wasn't totally ignorant in the sense that I was a publisher of books because I
You worked
published
in publishing.
a lot of other people's books. So
Yeah.
I thought, oh, I know how to publish books, but in fact, um, you have to learn a lot. So I attended a lot of conferences and things, and one of the stories that I heard about was Andy's the way he first published his book. And I thought, well, that's a very interesting approach, and it means that you sort of cut out the application approach to traditional publishers, which I knew would be a long and tedious process. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, okay, I know some of this stuff, I can learn other parts of it, and I can get lots of feedback from readers where possible. And so I decided I'll go down the self-publishing route, and so far it's been an amazing journey. Um, I realize how much support traditional publishers do give to books,
Mhm.
and you have to be doing that yourself. You can't just publish; you have to be pushing, pushing, pushing. Um, I've recently done an audio. The first version, the first book, Born in Space, has been made into an audio book, beautifully narrated by Gabrielle Gums Gordon, who lives in California. And I was amazed how successful that's been. That there's a lot of appetite for audiobooks, and I
Yes,
was
there's
I was looking at some of the numbers, and then I think, oh, it's done much better than the hardback, for example, even though it's comparable price actually. But so
interesting. Well, people
uh,
that like to actually listen to audiobooks often when they're driving,
yeah.
which, was great. So as a self-published author, Jeremy, what was the most influential piece of advice you were given? And pay it forward, what would you offer to aspiring self-published authors?
Well, the big thing I learned out of these conferences is if you're self-published, you need to write a series. And because the amount of effort it takes to put into marketing your book, it's cumulative. And with a series, you start to build on the previous books. And that is true. That's happening with my books. So um, the biggest thing was write a series, which is why I set up the first book, Born in Space, with 7 children. So theoretically, there could be 7 books
Ah,
if you're
see,
not
that was
careful.
so clever. And the second book, Space Vault, starts off with not too many spoilers, but one of those children. And you said you have a third book.
Yeah. So each one employs the same characters in different ways. It introduces new characters, but the idea is to go through, if people can stomach it, maybe all 7, but at least up to 5 books, I
That's
think.
amazing. So will you continue with the strong female protagonists?
Yeah, I think people like that. Although the third book has um, a male protagonist as well, who the intersection of one of the sons trying to um, make peace with his father, or at least outgrow his father.
Okay.
So um,
Well, it's
it,
interesting to have a male perspective also, of course.
uh, it's not meant to be one-sided or the other. It's
Yeah.
just meant to have sufficient interest for everybody, and sufficient emotion and depth and empathy within it.
And when is the pub date for that? Or are you still working on it?
I think it'll be May or June. I
Wonderful.
try to time my publications now with the World Sci-Fi Convention, which this year is going to be in Los Angeles in the summer.
Okay.
So, if I
Makes
can produce a book to publicize at that event, then it's helpful.
Yeah.
and it's a good target. So I've written most of the book. I'm going to send it to. I've got a very good editor who I got on Reedsy who's done all the other two books. So she knows the characters well and can help me finesse the third one.
Also, a truly important aspect of self-publishing, a very good editor.
Yes, yeah, I have had the other two books. I had two editors because I knew I was pretty weak and needed help from other people.
And now you're in the swing of things. Now you've got it down, really.
Well, there's so many different aspects that you don't realize. I mean, just at the end of all this, you then have to format the book,
Yeah.
and you can get it professionally formatted, but I did it through Atticus, and formatting for different types of book, you have to change things a bit because the page count comes out differently and where things land. So it's a complex thing. Each stage is complex.
Yes, it is. Okay, so getting back to The Martian, and it was made into a movie, as we know. Comparisons of your books have been made to Interstellar, which I can see that. Do you have dreams of the big screen? Who do you envision playing Teagan, your main protagonist?
Well, no, I don't think of who could possibly play the main characters, but I would obviously love it if the books were made into something. People have inquired about it, but the problem is the books are quite complex. So it will take a very good screenwriter to adapt them into something useful for them. When I was much younger, I did courses on screenwriting, and I realized actually it's a bit of a waste of time because normally directors or producers want to write their own script anyway.
Yeah.
So I thought it's much better to write novels and let other people do the work.
Absolutely. So, Jeremy, what do you want readers? Just our last there. What would you like readers' last thought to be when they turn the final pages of Born in Space and Space Vault?
I think amazement, if possible. There's so much happening, and if you can just take into account some of the ideas of in the next year, there's going to be so much progress in terms of where mankind is headed, colonization of the moon, next step, walking again on the moon, asteroid development, things like that. Almost occupation of space, because there's so many satellites now around the Earth that we've almost all that space there is now occupied by humankind. And whereas in the 1950s or something there were about one satellite or two satellites, now there's thousands, I think hundreds of thousands maybe. So the takeaway is just amazement. Amazement of where things are headed and how are we going to be part of it.
Awesome. So can you just hold up the cover of each book? I'd just like our viewers to...
If you can see them, I don't know if you can see them, but
Born in Space.
that's the first book. And then the second one is
book 2.
Yeah, I'm sort of fairly primary colors.
Yeah, they're great.
The next one is going to be yellow. I mean, the next one is going to be blue, so that on the stand they stand out as fairly primary colors. Because I realize when you have thumbnails on Amazon or something, you need to stand out.
Absolutely. So where can listeners follow your work or support what you're creating next?
Well, all my books are published on Amazon. Then I branched out into other sites. So, I've gone wide on the first book. And as I mentioned, the first book is now an audiobook as well. I have my own website called jeremycliftbooks.com.
That's what I was looking for. Excellent.
I think I mean, I don't think I sell much through my website. I'm not one of these brilliant marketers who.
Well, the website is actually very, very good and also really interesting.
I try to make it visually interesting.
It is.
Uh, there's lots of people who've experimented with direct marketing, and like you've got the Book Talk shop and Books Buy and things like that, even Shopify. I haven't done all that because it just, you only have so much effort you can put in. But I definitely will try to expand my marketing and maybe make the website more useful.
Well, Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us today. This was so much fun. We're really looking forward to the next book due to
Thank you
be
so much.
published in May. Will we see you at book camp in April by any chance?
Yes, I'll be there. Yes, yeah, yeah,
Excellent. Look
yeah.
forward to it. That's
I
fantastic.
I loved the last one. Yeah, it was great.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a great day. Join us
Okay,
next
thank you.
podcast when we chat with Gisela Rose, author of Elixir: Journey to Ancestral Alchemology. This is your hostess, Gabby Olzak of the Gab Talks. Until next time, keep on reading.